Hello, welcome to the podcast. I am your host, René,
And my name is Descartes.
and today we'll be talking about witchcraft.
And witches.
Very bad, very devilish.
You're going to like it very much. It's
Yes.
very interesting.
Okay, but what exactly is witchcraft?
Renee, tell me, what is witchcraft?
Witchcraft. There's no single definition of witchcraft because its meaning shifts across cultures and time. However, a broad working definition might be witchcraft is a set of beliefs or practices involving supernatural, spiritual, or magical forces, often associated with individuals, or witches, believed to manipulate these forces for harm or healing.
So within this category of witchcraft, people and researchers have defined three different types of witches in the past. And so there is three approaches. So there is lots of debates in history to define what is a witch. But we've been researching a lot with this book, A History of Witchcraft, from Jeffrey B. Russell and Brooks Alexander. And it explores sorcerers, heretics, and pagans. I don't know if you can see the book, but here.
The book? So we've defined three different types of witchcraft, and we'll be talking about the epistemological approach on each of these three subjects.
So we can define, to begin with the anthropological approach, which means essentially that a witch is a sorcerer.
But what is a sorcerer, and how is it different from witchcraft?
Okay, I can tell you what a sorcerer is. So essentially, a sorcerer has already a bad connotation connected to it. So it is essentially, in the stories, a man has a magical powers and uses them to harm other people.
A man or a woman?
And a sorcerer is typically a man.
Is it defined as a man?
Yeah, typically.
Then how is it
In the
connected
stories.
to witchcraft?
Because it's also the manipulation of magic
Aha.
to harm people.
Okay,
But
to
this is
harm
because of-
or to heal.
Because it is a misconception that witchcraft it is to harm, but it could also be someone that uses magic, that practices magic to obtain certain ends. But many people do not agree with this because witchcraft and sorcery are said to be very different because of the different practices, beliefs, spells that are used. But also the kind of authority people. So sorcery is more connected to warlocks and to men, and witchcraft is more connected to women.
And additionally, there's also a kind of stigma around it, because when witch is defined, it is almost negatively implied, while a sorcerer is not necessarily a negative thing.
Then we have the European history viewpoint, which is the most famous one in my opinion, which is that the witches worship the devil. So they believe that the devil, the Satan, is the most important person in their life. They follow his guidelines, and we will determine later on why this is believed or who believes this. But I can also tell you that it is most famously women, or said to be.
Yeah, but this also tackles the subject of the devil and how witchcraft is inspired by a practice of the devil. Well, this is not inherently true. In religious times and in Western culture, it is very much associated that witchcraft is a sorcery of the devil.
Lastly, the most modern conception of witchcraft, which are the modern witches. So they are worshipped gods and goddesses, and they practice magic for good ends. And more holistically, they're people among this society, and it is based off neo-paganism, which we will also dive on later.
So how in the current days, in this modern world, is witchcraft seen? Is it still negatively implied and worshipping the devil, or has it taken a new turn? Okay, Let's dive deeper into the first subject. So what exactly is a sorcerer compared to a witch?
So sorcerer comes from the French word sorcier, and it is something that it is someone that famously practices bad magic or negative magic, and it has two different fields. It has the high magic and the high sorcery and the simple sorcery. The high sorcery is the belief in the cosmos and that everything can be changed in the cosmos through magical practices, and they can affect multiple people and multiple environments. So this can be backed up by science at a certain point.
So high sorcery is not indefinitely meant as something fake or magic. It is actually based on sciences.
Well, it can be, Papa would agree, I think, because an example of this is the butterfly effect, which is proved, and it could be false.
It could be falsified.
Yes, which is the effect that a simple flap of a butterfly's wings could change completely different events across the world and timeline.
Right. So there is actually objective facts in sorcery.
Okay, so in the anthropological approach, we have the witch that he calls the sorcerer. And in sorcery, we can find two different types. There's a simple and a high sorcery. So in the simple sorcery is a kind of self-practice. It impacts one individual or a very small target. Whether high sorcery, it's based on the belief of cosmos and that every action or spell that you actually do affects multiple people, multiple environments.
So this is the butterfly effect, no?
Kind of, yeah. You can connect it to the butterfly effect because it starts with something very small and then it affects multiple people in multiple different environments and cross countries and even timelines.
Right. But this is a proven science. This is very objective. So Popper might actually agree with this in the sense of it can be falsified.
Exactly.
So interesting. Not everything around sorcery is intentionally as relativism.
No, absolutely not. It can be very objectivist depending on what kind of sorcery and what kind of practices you are looking into.
Right.
If you want. Even another objective practice within witchcraft, or said to be within witchcraft, is herbology.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of witchcraft is actually from Eastern culture, where it is seen as practiced medicine, which is currently still very much an active science.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any examples for our audience?
No. An example could be in Asia, there's a lot of spiritual herbology with practices including different meditative practices, including herbs and drinking tea. And this has been proven to help with the cognitive abilities of healing patients.
Yes, but even health-wise, I think the chamomile tea, for example, to heal, I think it was the throat. So a type of herb or a plant that is actually used a lot in herbology for healing, for physical healing, is the eucalyptus leaf, for example. It turns into eucalyptus oil, and it's good to clear the airways.
Yeah, and you also see it in modern day products a lot, where there's a lot of herbology implemented in our products.
Rosemary oil for the hair growth. In another hand, and in least empirical approach, you have the simple science, because they used to believe that it's a kind of a coincidence in the end. It is not so falsifiable because it is quite broad. There is no proof.
Yeah, you connect two different events that are not necessarily related.
Like if you would, for example, do a little dance and with someone sick, and then that person actually became sick, or even horoscopes, for instance, it's too broad. There is no correlation that can be proven or falsifiable.
Yeah, a kind of pseudoscience. Another example would be a rain dance, where different cultures people would dance in order to summon the rain. And then, if it actually rains, you can say that the dance has caused this and worked. But this is actually very much not falsifiable.
So another approach and another type of witch is the European history viewpoint, where it is mainly based on the devil. There's a lot of things to say about this. So first off, there's a lot of records from this because of the Inquisition. This happened in the 12th century, more or less, and that's when the witches in Central Europe were mainly prosecuted, chased after.
Chased after, oh my god. Witch hunt,
Yeah,
yes.
burned at the stake.
Burned at the stake. We all know the story. But is witchcraft inherently bad in this era, or is it just how it's been written in history? Why was witchcraft even used if it was so suppressed?
So at the time, most records were actually written by members of the church, because other people and the poorest people, which is mostly the people accused of witchcraft, did not have the resources or knowledge to be able to make the records. So they were recorded by the church. And what...
So in Western views, you could say that our information was kind of limited because the only things that we have retained was by the church.
Exactly. So, for example, the belief of Catholicism, when it concerns to witches, is that actually the scholasticism approach is that essentially witches were mainly women because they believed and they copulated with the devil.
Right. So their beliefs and their practices are actually summons of the devil, and the devil has possessed them, according to the church. But then why couldn't men be witches?
Because essentially they did not believe in homosexuality. There were no gay people.
Ah,
So, if the devil is inherently a man, because so is God, and so the devil must be also a man, he could only copulate with women. So, only women could be witches.
that actually makes sense.
This belief that only women could be witches could actually be connected to hermeneutical injustice.
Ja, Miranda Frikke.
Because they do not possess the same toolbox. So, because homosexuality is not a thing, they could only be the ones blamed. And also because women were in a much lesser position of power back then. They did not have the strength or even the power within the church to defend themselves or to prove wrong. Even the certain practices of judging whether a witch was a witch were not backed up by anything. They were not even tested on men either. For example, one of them was to drown a witch or to put them in water, and if they sank, they would be pure. They would not be a witch. But if they floated, they would be considered a witch.
Yes.
Human bodies float. Therefore, they would always be connected to being witches.
We could also talk a little bit about the academic injustice, because academics at the time were very much suppressed by the church, and thus practices like women are not very present in these days academics because they were not accepted by the church.
Or even just simple atheists. Although it depends on the society, because in Central Europe it was the case that it was mostly judged by the church and the records were made by the church. But in Britain, in England, they actually condemned it, but it was a bit later. I think it was in the 16th century. They actually saw witchcraft as a civil offense.
Right. So it was not actually harmful because it attacks the church. It's harmful because it attacks the people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you tell me a little bit more about this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very simple. Essentially, because they believed that people would use witchcraft to cause harm to other people, it was seen as as a civil offense because it was seen as a weapon.
Right.
Essentially.
So
you
people would have more power actually than the ordinary people, witches.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could you tell me a little bit more about witch hunts and why would people go on these witch hunts? Like, what is their motive and their the philosophy behind it?
So their motive was just it kind of surged from things that people could not explain that they were scared of, like weather events, or even health events like the plague, and they essentially needed a scapegoat.
Something to blame.
Yeah, something to blame. So this is why the surge up in witches became so real, but also caused a lot of debate that brought a lot of cultural significance to a lot of things. But it also depends a lot on the place where the witchcraft in question is from, because we just covered England, for example, but right before these witchcrafts, they had something called the cunning folk, which were witch doctors. So they were believed to have cures for some diseases that did not have cures at the time. At the same time, in Africa, they had the witch doctors as well, that we believe that essentially some of mental illnesses or even weights in conscience would make you physically sick. So it has not always been seen as bad.
So these many different views of witchcraft across different locations and different communities actually connects very well to Koen's standpoint, where different beliefs are actually true within certain communities, because the more people support them, the more people follow this.
Exactly. In many communities in Africa even, this is believed as the entire science or health craze till to this day. It's the way that they have to cope with illnesses and with grief. So in their own society, this is the cure for health. There is not proven things. It's not an empirical approach. It is simply what has been worked for them until now.
Yeah. So it is very much relativism instead of objectivism. However, it does not make the science less true or not worth worshipping, because if you do not agree with these standpoints, then will be cast out of your village or from your community. So there's actually a huge benefit in believing in either witchcraft or not. Which is another very interesting topic, that essentially people from this time had to believe that witchcraft has to exist, because if they didn't, then they would deny the practices of the church of denying witchcraft.
But would you then consider these big events like the plague as being a shift in paradigm? Because all of a sudden the cunning folk that were researched and that were looked for curing diseases were the ones being prosecuted.
Yes, so there is this huge shift, because where first the witches were very much suppressed and denied, now because people do believe in witchcraft, they seek for any means to cure the plague or cure their illness, because they have a new need for it. So it is maybe a paradigm shift from, no, we need to get rid of all the witches because they worship the devil, to maybe this is a new practice in healing and providing for our society.
Mm-hmm. Connecting to this then, would you not agree that maybe Feyerabend's approach would be the ideal way of looking at this from an empirical standpoint? Because if in these communities, in these different communities, it is agreed that everyone could call their own scientific belief or health cure, depending on whether it's witchcraft or not. Maybe.
I think to an extent it's a very interesting connection. But in Feierabend, it is essentially every man and woman should choose for themselves whether or not they believe in this practice. Well, I think there's still very much a stigma in communities where you should believe or you should not believe into a certain aspect.
So it would never be possible, in effect, because within the same community there would be too many divergent opinions.
Exactly.
So Kuhn's approach would be the best.
I think it fits very well in the time period. Another thing I would like to talk about is Plato's cave in connection to witchcraft. Witchcraft, as we see it now, might be very different, and we can categorize it as people being within the cave, and they look at certain aspects of witchcraft and they define it as truth or as false. And people have their very own opinions, but in the eyes of the church and religion, like at the time, it was actually a very holistic view. Like, this is the truth, and this is what you should assume to be the truth, as if they have the God's eye view and they see the entire holistic approach.
So essentially, people were made to be in the cave because of the Bible. So because what says in the Bible is the only absolute truth.
Exactly. So you could not be outside of the cave because you are believing that you already see the entire view. So you think you're already outside of the cave. Well, we would now look back at it from, at least from a more objective view, that you are actually not in the cave, or that you are in the cave.
Interesting. There are actually in the play of perception that we are discussing now. It also reminds me of another part of this research and of this movement from the 12th century when the witch hunts started happening, right before the scholastics, which are the catharsists. Essentially, it was an entire religion that just called Catholics. I apologize for the word, but bullshit. They just said that they made a full-on front for worshipping the devil by basing themselves in this Bible, in this big book, and that it was all a front essentially to coerce more people into worshipping the devil, but selling it as worshipping God.
Right. So there's an entire religion actually that divides Catholicism and the church and the Bible.
Yeah.
Well, they still believe in God, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because it is very very complex, but there is essentially because Catholicism they believe in procreation, so you need to reproduce to be able to continue spreading God's message. And Catharists believe the act of procreation is a sin, and so when you do it, you are condemning someone into their own prison of flesh. So they believe that Jesus was a pure being of light, and that's why he didn't suffer at the cross. He could stand, he could still believe, because he was purely made of light. He was not imprisoned by this flesh. And so when you mate with someone, you would imprison someone else in the flesh. So essentially, this was their whole belief to why they were actually worshipping the devil and not God.
Definitely a shift from the more Bible view and the religion of Christianity. Just the belief that the spirit and the soul are separate from the body, which we also see in other cultures, like in Eastern cultures. This is with the chakras. It's a very known thing.
Mm-hmm. And this reminded me of Plato's cave, because essentially catharsists, they position themselves as outside the cave when one could argue if that was actually the truth. But what it reminds me mostly of in the philosophy of science is when we, collectively, René Descartes, have explored in the Cartesian anxiety, which is that we may have this malicious devil manipulating our view of the world. So we never know if the world is actually what it is, which is what the catharsists thought that Christians were doing to their followers.
Yeah, we need this. We need to be grounded and discover what is actually truthful for us. And in this time, it was very helpful to have religion as a stepping stone to build everything on, because whatever happens, you have God, and you can go back to it.
But if people keep destabilizing the ground, not even offering an option for not having a religion in the first place, so they could be grounded, this will never be possible.
No. I think from here we can maybe move on to more modern witchcraft and how it's currently seen and viewed.
Yes.
Yeah. So, witchcraft was very suppressed in medieval times and up to the 16th century. Actually, up till the 19th century, just about, it is still very much not talked about.
20th century.
20th century, 1950s-ish.
Yes.
Witchcraft was still very much suppressed and preferred not to be talked about because it is still, in the eyes of Christianity, a negative thing. There's a very negative stigma. But as atheism starts to grow and world wars have happened, we start to see another paradigm shift, actually.
Yeah, because it is the moment where people start reclaiming their own identity.
Yes.
So the 1960s, for example, for the gay rights movement was big. And so that's in the witchcraft world, that's when people decided to create this new... it's not a religion, it's mostly like a set of religions called the neo-paganism, where they look into the practices and the belief systems from medieval ages that were condemned and that were only explored until then from the perspective of the records, which were inherently biased because they were made by the Catholic Church mostly, or figures of power. And they decided to reclaim it and rebrand it based off different past religions. So we have the Celtic reconstruction, for example, which is essentially based off Celtic beliefs. They had the Norse paganism, so from the Norse mythology beliefs. They also had Chemeticism, which is connected to the Egyptian beliefs and the Egyptian gods. From the southern Europe, we have the Hellenism, so from Greco-Roman mythology.
Mm-hmm.
And then Eastern Europe, they had the native faiths, so it's more from the Baltic regions, and also the African diaspora beliefs, which is actually super interesting because it's a mix of beliefs due to colonialism. So voodoo, for example, it's
Right.
the African practices mixed with Christianity.
So two things I wanted to say. The first thing is that this is now this paradigm shift was only really possible because people have been stepping away slightly from religion and the church in order to go to a way more individualistic approach. You see that in today's society everywhere on social media and other aspects. It's very individual, and you have the freedom to be yourself with gay rights, as you mentioned before as well. Like it's a very we're starting to be very more individualistic, which also allows for practices like witchcraft to arise again, but with their own twist, with these different cultures and different influences from everywhere around the world, because people find them interesting and they start believing in them again. Which then you can also connect more to Feierabend again, because it is very individualistic, but you can approach it from every way you want, and nothing is inherently wrong or right. It's just what you believe in.
Absolutely. It is people are more free to connect to their own beliefs, also because the widespread message within the internet has promoted this kind of individualism and freedom and of self-expression. So
even more on this, because the way it used to be is if you had a weird belief or an individualistic approach on something, if you would throw it out, you would get judged or punished, or in the church in the time, the witch hunts were not for nothing. But in current times, if you have a certain belief, you can throw it out on the internet, and you'll get confirmation from different places all across the world with all people sharing this belief. I'm a little lost for words here, but they
find connection.
They find connection. Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I believe also that this surge in the neo-paganism can be connected to the pragmatism, because it is certain communities of people that have agreed that this is their approach and it works for them. So
they find their own truths in that sense.
Exactly. So and bringing back their own truths that were overlooked, maybe from religions that were past buried. like voodoo, for example, and bring them back, connect them to what it makes sense.
You give a new light to them and new information.
But this is not all pretty and beautiful and everything, because still witchcraft or practices that would be considered witchcraft to this day are still frowned upon and ridicularized, especially online. For example, with people that believe in the healing power of crystals.
Yeah, it can be seen as ridiculous. While there are very vivid communities that do agree with this, there's also a very rising against the movement.
Because witchcraft is essentially not looked as a religion; it's just looked as a practice. So people have an empirical kind of viewpoint when judging these things. So people that practice tarot, for example, yes, it is broad. Yes, it is not falsifiable, like Popper agrees. So it can never be considered a science.
It's a pseudoscience, and a lot of arguments stem from induction still. So actually finding an objectified truth or an absolute truth is very hard. And since the Wiener Kreis, we've been developing into a more empiric, scientific approach, while witchcraft is inherently a very meditative approach.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So in here, I would agree with Feyerabend that everybody should be free to agree what their truth is, to agree what brings them strength, and what they want to base their opinions on.
That sounds about right, yeah. So you can believe in whatever you want, because in Feyerabend's approach, there is no right or wrong. And if you have a more objective approach, that's completely fine. And then maybe witchcraft doesn't fit in with this view of the truth. But maybe you are very much within the cave then.
Will we ever step out of the cave?
Are we the shadows?
Dun, dun, dun.
I am René.
And I am Descartes.
Thank you so much for watching our podcast on witchcraft.
Thank you for also... thank you, Maxi Radio, for lending us the space. And thank you, Vivar, for lending us the space where the space is in.
Yes.
And thank you, Kavian, for setting up the camera and the microphones for us.
Thank you. And thank you, Max, Tom, Rob, for hosting the lectures.
For our mustaches that have been doing a great job holding on to our skin.
Good jolly. Oh my god.
My god! Look.
Sure.
Like this? I don't know if you can see. Are we still live? We can see though.
Excuse me, but as René would say, bullshit.
Okay, go.
Hello, welcome to the podcast. I am René.
And I'm Descartes.
Today, we'll be tackling the subject of witchcraft.
I forgot to do the French accent.
Okay. Take 2 out of 15. Hello, welcome to the podcast. I'm René.
And I'm Descartes.
Today, we'll be tackling the subject of witchcraft.
You are going to like it very much.
You will love it.
It is super interesting.
Maybe
If you laugh at everything that I say, how are we supposed to be the same person?
That is very true. I think we do one more take. Because this was terrible.
It keeps falling off for me.
She fell off.
Okay. I put fixing powder on my face also before I left the house, so.
Final take. We can do this. We just roll with it, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
So there is the anthropology. My mustache keeps falling off.
It is okay, Edgard.
It just peels off completely. I think we're gonna have to draw.
Let's do it upside down. Or you drink draw it on.
Upside down? Okay.
Do we need another take, or do we just continue?
No, we continue. We cut it off and then we
Okay,
continue.
yeah, that's fine.
It was too good, okay.
It was good.
It was fine.
I agree.
Want me to pull it face up? I feel like it's face down.
There's a little chin.
I didn't put it yet. Okay. Cool. Okay. To heal. But essentially, sorcery and witchcraft are inherently different things. This is one of the things that I put that we needed to put in, but I forgot to Google it.
Right. I'm a little lost on.
So essentially, like, the anthropological approach is that my mustache keeps twisting around. The witch is a sorcerer, but there is differences between being a sorcerer and witchcraft.
Yeah.
So witchcraft is inherently for women, or is this considered done by women, and sorcery is more by men, and it's kind of like the typical image that you have of Merlin, for example. And it's also, it's very debated. There's not really a concrete reason.
She reads while holding her mustache. Okay,
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't remember this part. The card had a lot of hair.